Welcome to another episode of Fairy Technologies Web Development Training. So, on this tutorial, I will be talking about forms and inputs in HTML. So, opening this forms and inputs in HTML. So, this is going to be explaining some major things about all you need to know on writing a form on HTML. So, when talking about writing a form, we are trying to explain to you that there are certain form there are if you notice that on your browser, when you want, maybe there's a website you went to and they say, okay, fill this form to get started. Like, let's say for example now, registration page on a site. Maybe you want to register on a site, you ask to fill your name, your BVN, your details and everything. Those the HTML that is used to do that is an HTML form and input. So that's just it's a HTML form that is used to write that. Then the designing and everything is done with CSS and functionality with JavaScript majorly. So we'll be talking basically on what that is in this video. So as we all know, if you want to start any project, the first thing you need to do is to create a folder for your project. So this folder will contain every document you're going to be writing in this. I think we've explained that in our previous video, but I just want to do a little recap on that. So the first thing we do is we already created a folder that's called inform and input. So next we open with VS Code. If you right click and it did not open with VS Code, then you need to find another way to install your VS Code again, and this time around you take there's a video I made on how to make sure this opens with VS Code. So you have to uninstall your VS Code, then install again and make the settings. So moving on, we open our folder with VS Code. I already created an HTML document on this folder. So this is the index.html folder, and we'll be talking about forms and input in HTML. So now HTML forms, they are essential components in web development that allows user to submit information to the server. This information might include login credentials, personal details, search queries, or feedback. So I've explained that okay, forms, HTML forms are used to collect your details. It can be used to as a search query. If we let's take for example a website like maybe on Jumia now, and you want to look for a product. So when you click on the search button that you now type what you want to type there, that particular inputs that you see, it is done by a form, by an HTML form too. So for feedback, maybe okay, rate our conversation on the website. Now you say rate our conversation, then they now give you a form to fill. Those are done by HTML form. Or maybe they say, okay, join this wait list. There are some websites like that will be like join the wait list. They'll give you a form where you put your email address. Those are done by HTML form. So in this guide, we will dwell deep into the concept of HTML form and input, covering structures, various type of fonts of type, various input types, attributes, and how they interact with servers. So the first thing we'll be talking about is understanding form. So this says a form in HTML is a container that collects user input, sends it to a server for processing. So as I said, once you input that form, there is a JavaScript logic that works beneath that sends whatever things you have input after you click on your submit button to where it's supposed to be kept. So the form itself does not process any input, but it provides a structured way for a user to interact with with the web page. So the form is just to collect, while other functionalities are done at the back end. So basic form structure. So I'll be writing this in our code so that we can see this. Then we will now go live. So let's go live. Look at this form now. This is what the form is. So this form has an action, a method, label that has a for, type, ID, name. We will explain all what this thing entails in this video. So follow with me. So now breakdown of this structure. So now if you take a look at the first thing that came up here, the first thing here is the form. So this form is an element that that is an element that defines the form. So this can be like, okay, let's take for example, if when I explained tags in the videos where we talk about tags, we say tag can be in different form. We have div as a tag, we have sections, we have h1, h2. So form is also an HTML element, and we can say form houses some particular here. It houses some particular element, just like a parent element, for example. Yeah, I can call it a parent element that houses all other elements. It can house inputs, can have text area, it can house options, it can house a lot of things. It can house button, and it can house label. So the form wraps around all input. I can use the word it houses all input fields, labels, and button. So now if you look at the first thing here, this is the form acts an action. So I think basically action itself is explanatory. That is, it will perform a function. So this majorly means a URL where the form data should be sent. This is where to be inputted. So if you input www.anything.com, in as much that can accept a form, once you click submit, it sends to that place. So now the second one here, which is the method, is to determine if you either using it to get something from the backend, or you are using it to send something to the backend. Basic explanation. So that's the work of method. Method is just like, what are you going to what method is this form doing? Is it sending something or is getting something? So under this, the method defines how the data should be submitted. So we have either to be submitted as a get. So this is majorly used for search queries. Okay, like I explained something earlier that, okay, if you want to search something on Jumia now, and you write what you want to search in the search button on Jumia. So it is this get method that goes to the that performs a function. I told you form perform a function, it sends something to the backend. So that's the work of form. So once your method is to get, then the form collects that thing you want to get from the backend, then it searches for it and shows you. So that's how you see what you search for, and you see maybe not found, have option not available, product not available. So that's what the get is used for. So form is just like a phone. Yeah, let's remember that sends some that makes the call. Okay, hello, what do you want? I want to say something to you, or I want to collect an information from you. So that's just the work of a form. And under the form, we have get and post. So the get is to collect a query parameters, and then the post is to send something. So that's just basically what it's used for. So now the next one is label. So if you know something now, okay, maybe you have like series of containers in your room, and you want to do something. You want the container looks alike, like they look alike, and you want to be able to identify that, okay, this is for Gary, this is for rice, this is for beans. That's why the label is for. So the label defines how the form will be submitted. No, sorry. The label provide a textual label for input elements to make form more accessible. So what I'm trying to explain is that the label is just like an identification that a physical identification for you to understand that okay, this is what this form, this input is used for. So now let's take for example, if when we open this live, this says it says that this is name. So at least to tell me whatever it is I'm writing in this place will bear what the name, and for the this one that says email, whatever it is I'm writing inside this place will bear what email. So this is a label that tells you what this form is for, and this is a label that tells you what this form is for. So that's basically the explanation. That's basically the explanation for what? For label. Now inside this label we have four. So now let's take for example, I have this for example now we have input that is for the username, we have another input that is for the user email, and then we have more input like that. So this form now has something that's called for. So whatever these four houses means, four houses name, and the next thing that house for the ID is what is name. That is, you are telling me that okay, if a developer like me now is reading your code and I see four, and the four has name inside, then I see an ID that say names, I will know automatically that this label is for what? Is for this input that says username. So this four is an identification to say that this one here, this ID is what? Is for username, is for the name. So that's basically what four is used for. Four is just like okay, who is this for? It's for what is this used? What is this for? It is for what? It is for my username. What is this for? It is for my email. So that's what basically the usefulness of for. So now the next one is input. Now input captures the user's details. Yeah, let me explain. So when we say now, let me take for example here in our browser, this box that you see is an input, Abby, because this is the label and this is the input. This is the label and this is the input. So this input collects my information, and now that's basically what the input does. But now they now make it more advanced for you to be able to like do some certain identifications, do some unification, how will I say now? Do some kind of uniqueness to the input. And that's why the for came up and the ID came up. So we can in this place we can put class, your choice. You know, I explained something that class and input are basically similar. Class and input are basically similar because they are both identifiers. So you can use you can use an ID, that is an ID of a name, that is you are uniquely identifying something that okay, this ID, this name, this name is an identification for this input, and the class too is also the same work as ID. The only difference is that the ID here, if the only difference, there's basically no difference. The only difference is just the way they are being called. So ID can be is called with an hash, while a class is called with a star. So that's just the difference. So now moving on to, and the calling, it will only happen during the CSS sections, not on the HTML. So when we get to CSS, I will explain the difference between the ID and the class. But majorly in input, we majorly don't really use class, except if you want to do some styling. Yeah, that's why we use class. So and now moving on to label, that's talking about input. So inputs can contain text, email, password, and a very lot more of that. Wow. So input. Now let's take for example input. So if you look at something here, input of B, input of button, input of button. Let me write that input. So these are the things input can be for. So we have input that says week, input of URL, input of time, input of text, input of telephone, input of T, input of submit, input of search, input of S, input of reset, input of range, input of radio, input of password, number, month, image, file, email, date and time local, color, checkbox, everything. There are different types of input. So input is just collect it, then it now has some types of collection. So now, for example, if you want to input on a now let's take for example input of a password now is different from the input of numbers. Input of number is different from input of text. Is different from the input of text. Now let me show you the difference now. So now this is, let me put something and put a label so that we can know which input is which. So let's put a label of label 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 for label of password, and the next one label of number, and the next one label for text. So if you check this on once you control save, you will see it, but there are some but I have set mine to auto save. So this is it. If I click on this, if this autosave is not marked, whatever change I made, I'll have to like control save before it can show on the browser. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. Before it can show on the browser. And but to make work faster and easier for you, just mark the autosave. So you see it here, autosave. And an extension that can use to show what you are doing on the browser is called Live Server. It's called Live Server. So you will have this is the live server. You will install this. Once this is installed, you'll be able to show whatever thing you are doing here directly to what to your browser. So now, before we move on, let me explain a type of extension we need again. Prettier. So this extension is to format code. So should be a video that explains what it does. If it's not there, I will explain myself. So okay, it's not there. So now look at something. This is here, others are here. So this form is not what is not very in a good shape. So this is where Prettier comes in. So how to do this Prettier? So you go to your settings. This is where your settings is on your VS Code. File here, file, preference, settings. Then you do format. You search for format. So once you search for format, default formatter, you click on this, then you pick that Prettier here, then you now do format on save. So it means once you control save, it automatically format your page. And the format this is talking about is not the one that clears, it's the one that arranges your code. That's work of format. So once I do this and click control save, look at it now, it rearrange my code and make it what and make it monitor. Simple. So that's an extension. So as time goes on, I will explain some extensions to us. So I'll just explain it in a bit whenever it is needed. So now look at this. For example, this will collect email, and if I put number, it will enter. This we collect any types. But now take for example number. If I click F, I'm writing some words, and I don't know if you can't see it because I'm only projecting the screen. But I'm writing, just try writing some letters of the alphabet inside your number, it will not answer because it's only accepting number. But if I put on any number, it will write it there. So that's just the difference between number and text. Why text here will collect anything, both number and anything. So that's just how unique inputs are. So moving on, we have actions and attributes. No, before we do that, there is um this one is a type of input. As I said earlier, input of password and code. These are the types. The IDs want to uniquely identify the type of input, while the name is for it's just like a name to identify to. This for identification, this is for uniquely identification, and lot all of this and this are for identification, and these two are for identification. Same goes to the label for input, label for email, and everything too. So now we have input that says the type to be submit. That is, this input will not be like other input because it is for submitting. That is, it performs the action of sending whatever things you've written inside this place it sends it to where necessary. And under the sending, we say our action to be displayed. So this action is where it's going to send to. So once I click on this input of submit, it sends to the action here. So that's just because this is a post. But if it's get, it sends to this place and get something for it. So those ones are advanced JavaScript for you to see what it gets and co. But what majorly this input does is what you ask it to do to the backend. So moving on, the action and the method attribute. So now we have explained what action and method attribute is to us. So the action is where the data will go to, why the method is either to send something or to collect something, send something then bring something. So that's what the get is for and the post is for. So HTML input element. I think I've explained that majorly, and that's the types of inputs. We have text input I've showed you, email input I've showed you, the one for password, the one for numbers, and the one for date. Let me show you the one for date. So let's just copy this. Let's just copy this and paste into our okay, and see. So let's write a label so that we can know what we are doing. Label, 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 label for date, label for date. And now let's copy this and paste it. So now let's check what it is for. So look at it now, day, month, year. So you can input your day here and you can click on this to pop out a bigger way for you to input your stuff. That's how it works. So moving on, we have the one for radio. So let's check what radio looks like too. Let's check what radio looks like too. So label for radio. Now let's check. Look at what the radio does. So this, even if I click on it, is not changing back to normal color it was before. But once I refresh, changes back. But there's a way that I can do it to that's another JavaScript that once I click on this, it will and I refresh it to still remain green. It will still remain blue color. And there's a way you can change the color to green, red, CSS. That's the work of CSS. So now that's another type of input. So there is more types. We have checkbox, we have file input, we have submit. So let's check the one for checkbox. So this is the one for checkbox. Let me paste the ones for look at the ones for checkbox. So click here is subscribe to our newsletter. So I can click here and I can unclick. That's the difference between this and the radio. I don't know if you understand. The radio is used, these radios are mostly used during maybe CBT exams, options. Option A, option B, option C, option D. So once you click on any of the four options, you cannot revert what you've clicked on. Don't know if you understand. That's basically the explanation. You cannot revert it. So okay, once you click on this, you can only click on other options, but you can't unclick. But why subscribe is your choice. Either click it or unclick. So that's the difference. So another one here is the one for file. So this file allows you to be able to to put documents, pictures. You can put your document, anyone, your picture, your folder, anything. You can put your picture, your folder, any type of file. And there's a way you can set it to select some type of file too. Those are advanced sections of this page, can be done with JavaScript too. So the next one here is labels and placeholder. I've explained what labels are. And now placeholder. Now let me explain something about placeholder too. So there are situations whereby this will not make sense for me to put name here. Maybe I want to like conserve space, or maybe I want to like just do my design to be more finer and like simple and stuff. So I don't want to put the name outside. I want to make the name to be inside this input here, and will still not affect my input. That's where placeholder comes in. So that the placeholder, there's a difference between placeholder and label. The difference is that label comes outside your input, while the placeholder is always inside your input. Now let's take for example, let's put a placeholder inside our input here. So placeholder, I put name placeholder. Now take a look at this. Did you see it? It writes what we did here. But once I click or write anything inside the input, it clears off. And once there's nothing inside, it comes back on. So that's the difference between label and placeholder. So I can use this in replacement to this. So that's just the difference. So moving on, we now have attribute form control. Now I said something about um input, about file, about the tag file, that I said I can set something. I can set it that okay, this file should be able to accept only images, or only accept music, only accept videos or anything. So that's the work of form control attribute. So I can control my input, okay, to accept only videos, only pictures. So that's what the control is for. It's just control. So same as input of text, I can control there's a control that is for required. That is, when we use this tag required, that is this form here, that is this particular, anything that is under this form, anything under this form, and I use the word require, you will not be able to submit until you fill all the form. It's just like, I don't know if you have ever filled a particular form whereby you have to fill all details before you are allowed to submit. So that's basically the work of what of that's basically the work of submit. That's basically the work of required rather. So the require will not allow you to submit your form until you fill something inside that input. So now the next one is minimum length and maximum length. So that is, you can set, now let's take for example, let's set for let's set for input. Now input, let's set for input of this, of password. So let's put this under here. Let's hide this. So we can have a clear view of what we are talking about. So now this password, that is Once I keep on writing, there are some points where I will not be able to write again. I'm still typing. I don't know if you can hear my keypad. And now it stopped, even though I'm still typing. That is, I've given it a maximum length, and I've given it a maximum length of how many character of 20 and a minimum of what of 8. So that's just basically what maximum and minimum is used for. So now the next one is allow you to specify, which is pattern. This pattern will be able to like, this pattern is majorly for maybe a type of test where you want to accept some a certain amount of word. Now let's take for example, let me hide this and this. So now let's say let's change this. Okay, yeah. So if you notice there, they said no, this is not what I wanted to paste. I want to copy this. So we are copying this. Let's paste it. Now, if you click enter your zip code, so once I enter blah 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 blah, it says a pattern of 5. So the now this we now I don't know. I'm not sure this will work here, except if I use the submit, but if I use the submit function. So what this is supposed to do is it will allow me click on write whatever it is I want to write to. But once I click on the submit, it reads this here and only and reject and prevent that submit and tell you to what to write only 5 digits inside the input. So I'm not we are not I cannot test it now because there is no submit button here. So but that's just basically what the pattern is used for. Okay, let's take it will allow you to write whatever amount you want to write, but once you want to submit it to prevent you from submitting until you write what he wants you to do. So that's just and what he wants you to do here is just 5 digits. So you have to like change it now and change it to what and change it to 5. So now autofocus. So this allows you to focus on the input field when the page loads. Now let's take for example, let's test it. Let's test it. So if you notice something, let's remove the autofocus first. Let's remove the autofocus and check. Now there is nothing, then we have to like click on. If you notice that something was blinking inside, something now here, something is blinking inside there. That is you have focused on this. That is what I want to input stuff, but with nothing there to keep on blinking that you are still focused on this input. And once I refresh my page, the focus is gone. So it is not focused on this. So I will have to like choose that where do I want to start from and go. But once I click, I will have to like take it off before it goes. But there is a control feature that helps you put your cursor there directly. You see, by default, either reload the page or not, it is always there. And I can start writing without having to click on it. So that's the work of autofocus. So now the next one here is disable. Now let's use the disable. What the disable will do is that the form will show, but you will not be able to use it. Now take a look. Normal, see, I can't even work on anything. I can't click on it no matter what. I'm trying to click on it now, but it's still not working because I have disabled it, even though it's still showing. So that's the work of disable. And the next one is randomly. So this makes input on non-editable but still send the data when the form is what submitted. So input, text, value, John Doe, and randomly. So input, let's see, this makes the font non-editable. So now let's test it. See, see, the what it does now, let me explain, is that this value that I've put here is the one that we send to the backend no matter what I click and no matter what I do, no matter what I write, it will not work. But when it is sending, it's sending this same John Doe. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. So it will send the John Doe even though I did not touch it. That is that input what I want to input itself. That okay, this is what is supposed to be here, and you cannot touch it, you cannot do it yourself, but you still send this to what to the backend. So that's the work of what of randomly. So now form submission. I've explained that using the get and the post method. So this is just basically a repetition and it's just a hey, yeah. So this I said something about the use of this is a bit of repetition and the use. So now let's use this method and see. So let's put it under the form. See, search and it's search. So that's just what it does. You see, you cannot get search. So that's basically what why the one for post is sending something. You've noticed that this search here performs a function of searching for something, and for the post, it will send to the backend. It will send to the backend while that one calls something from the backend after it has sent to it. So that's just it. So this form here that has the one for post, we send something to the backend. While the one for get we what we send and get. It will send something there, then bring something back as a result. While the post is not bringing anything back. So this one is more porous to like for hacking. Yeah, it is not secure. Yeah, what it does majorly, it sends something then brings something back. So you can actually use it to send something and bring something back if you're a very good hacker and all those stuff like that. But post is not bringing anything back; it's only sending. So that's the reason why we have to be careful whenever we are making input. Now the next one here is form validation. So majorly form validation is like is inbuilt to help user provide the correct data format without needing an additional JavaScript. Yeah, so all these things, minimum length that we are using the other time, required that we're using the other time, randomly that we're using the other time, all these ones randomly, autofocus. We can use JavaScript to do it, but to ease the stress of JavaScript, that is the reason why we are majorly using what we are using. We are majorly using HTML to do it. So that's just basically what they do. Even this type of submit, we can just use JavaScript, just a JavaScript of maybe okay at click there's a JavaScript that okay once you at click here function to do submit. If there's I will just set the JavaScript on a normal that okay once I click on this input, do what? Submit. That's just at click submit does, and that's JavaScript. But to ease the stress of doing all those ones, of writing what I want JavaScript to do for me, then go again to JavaScript and then write it down to do for me. So this type will just tell the JavaScript, okay, this is a submit button. So once JavaScript reads that okay, this is a submit button, it performs the action. So you don't need to. So the JavaScript does not need to like specify don't need to go to that particular thing and specify it. Once it sees that okay, there is a submit button that has been activated, it's sent directly. So that's basically what form validation is used for. So conclusively, forms and input are fundamental building blocks in web development. They allow user to interact and enable data collection, a very structured way to communicate with servers. Mastering different types of input and attributes and validation mechanisms is crucial for creating effective and interactive secured web applications. So I hope you understand today class, and thank you for listening, and see you in the next class.